We begin with the DeSantis presidential campaign under pressure to rebound from a rocky rollout. Joining us now from Miami is NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns. Also with us is former Democratic Representative Val Demings of Florida and former RNC Chairman Michael Steele, who is also an MSNBC political analyst. So, Dasha, what's a reaction from within DeSantis' world about the glitchy rollout here, and what is he doing moving forward?
Well, look, it's a little bit of a Rorschach test, right? If you are a DeSantis fan, then you are buying into the narrative that is coming out of the campaign, which is that this was an announcement, a launch that broke the internet, that shows the enthusiasm behind this candidate. If you don't like DeSantis, if you are, a Trump fan, especially, the Trump world is having a field day with this today. One of the spokespeople, Stephen Chung, giving us a statement saying glitchy, tech issues, uncomfortable. Silence is a complete failure to launch, and that's just the candidate. Another senior official within Team Trump, when I asked for a response, simply sending me back a picture of a glass of wine at a bar in Palm Beach, Florida. So a lot of reaction swirling. But look, this is one moment. This is a big moment, right? The launch. Now he's an actual candidate. He's been touring the country for the last few months without an actual campaign. He's been touting his Florida blueprint, but now he's going to hit the ground next week, starting in Iowa on Tuesday. So he did the thing that's the unconventional way to announce. Now he's got to do the thing that everyone has to do if they're running for president, which is really get the ground game going in these early states. So he'll be in Iowa, he'll be in New Hampshire, he will be in South Carolina. So that is going to be the next big test for him. Can he really do the retail politics that you need to do to get voters engaged on the ground? Everyone after this rollout will, of course, be watching to see how his campaign plays those events in those critical early states, Lindsay.
Congresswoman, you know Florida politics well, and I want to play part of what DeSantis said yesterday during a Fox interview about the culture wars that he has made a focal point of his campaign.
I've been proud as governor to stand for a culture of life. We're not comfortable having this company on a pedestal joined at the hip with the state of Florida. Our values have just gone in different directions. We proved it could be done in Florida. We chose facts over fear when it wasn't popular. We chose education over indoctrination. And we've chosen law and order over rioting and disorder. If we can do it there, we can do it for the country.
And talking about joined at the hip, he was obviously talking about Disney here. But we obviously know, Congresswoman, he has to get through the primaries first. And recent polling from Quinnipiac and CNN and Morning Consult all have Trump with a double-digit lead over DeSantis. Should he beat out Trump in a general election matchup, will his Florida blueprint come back to bite him?
Good morning. It's great to be with you. And let me just say this. When we think about what happened with the, quote, rollout last night, this is exactly what can happen when Ron DeSantis tries to out-Trump Trump. Good luck with that. But look, Walt Disney World, which was in my congressional district, is the largest employer in Florida. It is beloved by Floridians, and millions of people come to Florida to go to Disney World. So it certainly is not indicative of a pro-business kind of stance, which I certainly think the governor would want to have if he has any chance of even winning the primary or getting to the general election. I know that the governor wants us to focus on the cultural wars. The majority of Floridians, the majority of American people are not concerned about the culture wars. They're concerned about those everyday issues, those kitchen table issues that affect them, like Social Security and Medicare, elder care, the quality of education, or protecting our environment and how much money is going in their pockets. And so last night was not a good start for the governor. Of course, we know that there is time, but he still has a lot of work to do. And fighting with Disney is not the way to win.
Michael, how important is this next 48 hours for DeSantis? I mean, do you think that this rollout and how it went, could that potentially scare some big donors?
Yeah, I think it does. I think Dasha's got her finger on the pulse of how the campaign is looking at this, and certainly how they want voters to look at this. The problem is not the Ron DeSantis versus Trump voter. The problem is every other voter who isn't with Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump. And there are a lot of them in the Republican primary and the Republican Party. So there is that piece. He still has got to figure out how he gets the footing reset for what was a god-awful launch. I mean, I'm just telling you, as a former county, state, and national chairman, sometimes the mundane, the typical, the traditional rollout, it works. It just saves you a lot of headache, right? You got the roaring crowd, you're in front of them, you're connecting with people. People want to see that. And when the take on your candidate is he basically does not like people or hanging out with them or talking to them or engaging them. And we've seen some videos of some really weird looks the man gives people just from laughing to acknowledging who they are. You don't want to create a wall at the very beginning of this campaign by isolating him with Elon Musk. Really? That's the typical American you want to have a conversation with? So they've got some cleanup to do over the next 48 hours. And the mess that they've left on the floor from last night is going to make that cleanup a little difficult.
Congresswoman, on the Democratic side, we saw President Biden take a shot at the troubled rollout. That's really the most we've seen him engage in the campaign fight so far. So do you think we'll see some more of that? Some people called it trolling here. Or do you think he's also more likely, and his campaign is more likely, to just let Trump and DeSantis battle it out?
Well, look, I think the biggest problem that Ron DeSantis had in his rollout was Ron DeSantis. And certainly he's given every candidate in his party who's running for president, as well as the president of the United States, an opportunity to take a shot at him. That's exactly what campaigning is all about. So look, if I were President Biden, I probably would have done the same thing in a very subtle but very positive way. The bottom line is Governor DeSantis needs to get his act together if he has any chance at all of winning the Republican nomination for president.
Michael, that interview DeSantis did with Fox News last night, it was in the 8 o'clock time frame, and it wasn't necessarily with one of their flagship primetime hosts. The network also kind of dunked on DeSantis, essentially calling the announcement a disaster on its homepage. How do you think conservative media will play a role in this primary season?
It's going to be interesting because you can already tell the conflict and the sort of the tribalism within the tribe, if you will, that's already beginning to set itself up, and how these big media platforms within the conservative ethos system, is either Fox or OWN or certainly local radio. Now, local radio, a friend of mine sent me a clip from Virginia today. The local conservative radio there was ripping him a new one. And so you've got this sort of dynamic space that is already not necessarily bought into DeSantis. Remember, DeSantis is a political creature of the billionaire donor class of the GOP, not from the grassroots. There is not a grassroots orientation about him. And that sets up that dynamic that we're going to see play out between the moneyed interest and the established political interest versus what Trump owns, which is the folks who actually go out, work, volunteer, and vote in Republican primaries.